as you say, Qiao Yang, utter chaos, unprecedented scenes of chaos, even by the standards of the Trump administration. And we've seen plenty of that just even in the last 12 months. This is a day that few will ever forget, a day that started out with thousands of President Donald Trump's most ardent supporters gathering here in the US Capitol to protest, as you say, the effective certification of Joe Biden as the next US president, with President Donald Trump himself appearing just outside the White House in front of a huge rally of thousands of supporters, urging them to descend on Congress and take issue with even Republican lawmakers from their own party, those who President Trump felt had failed him by not overturning the results of that election. And they took President Trump at his word. We followed them down to the US Capitol here, where then those most fervent supporters stormed the Capitol with absolutely indescribable scenes there, tear gas being fired inside the center of US democracy, law enforcement officials, I should say, being forced to draw their weapons, and all of this ending in tragedy when a teenage girl died after being shot during those scenes in the Capitol. Eventually, police, bolstered by US National Guard troops, managed to get on top of the situation and pushed back those protesters after some hours. And you can see now a sort of calm has descended on the US Capitol. You can just see some police cars going past me as we speak, a kind of calm descending on the US Capitol, which belies those chaotic scenes. But that's partly because a curfew is now enforced here in Washington, D.C. That will go through until tomorrow, until Thursday morning. But extraordinary scenes here in Washington, D.C. Qiao Yang.
Oh, and you said one person was shot, and we're also hearing that police have arrested 13 people so far. What other details do you have for us on that?
Well, I can tell you that there's going to be an inquiry for sure into how law enforcement officials handle this. One of the big questions is, given that thousands of Donald Trump supporters were going to protest here, given that there was some protests organized right in the grounds of the US Capitol, why were law enforcement officials overrun in one of the most secure buildings in the world? In fact, we talked to some demonstrators coming out of the building who were proudly talking about how they'd been part of that, how they'd been inside the US Capitol. Very proud. They called this a peaceful demonstration, despite the fact that we just talked about one person died after being shot inside those protests. Those protesters were telling us that as far as they were concerned, this was a peaceful protest that only turned violent when law enforcement began firing tear gas at them. That is, of course, a matter of some dispute and something that's going to be discussed in the days and weeks to come after this. I can tell you, though, just in the last 15 minutes or so, lawmakers have resumed counting those votes that will certify Joe Biden as the next president. Vice President Mike Pence, who had to be whisked away into a secure location, said, let's get back to work. And that's what those lawmakers want to do.
There's been a lot of condemnation of what's going on there. Mike Pence came out and denounced this, so did Mitch McConnell. Owen, just tell us a bit more about other reactions you've heard.
We've had reactions from around the world, the head of the European Commission, the Prime Minister of Canada, all of them condemning this violence, and all of them drawing attention to what they say they insist on, a peaceful transfer of power here in the United States. But note that many of those leaders have been careful to condemn the mob, as many people are calling them, of people who stormed the US Capitol. Fewer people have. How much Donald Trump is responsible for all of this, of course, remains open to debate. Yes, he cajoled his supporters to come down to the US Capitol, and he did go on television later to effectively tell his supporters to go home. He also tweeted that his supporters should cooperate with law enforcement, but it's undeniable that he stirred up his supporters into a fervor, and the atmosphere changed dramatically when we were down here after President Trump finished his speech and urged his supporters to head down to the US Congress. I should say also another very swift reaction, Twitter, having decided to censor or draw attention to the inaccuracy of many of President Donald Trump's tweets, has now banned the US president from its network altogether.